We are gathered here just hours after a widely watched and closely tracked visit by Russian President Vladimir Putin. A visit that once again placed India at the center of global attention. At this moment, questions around power, partnerships, and geopolitical balance feel sharper than before. And to help us understand what transpired in those closed rooms, what signals India intended to send, and how New Delhi is reading the shifting currents of global politics from Moscow to Washington, from the Indo-Pacific to our own neighborhood, we have with us the person steering India's foreign policy.
For a country like us, a big country rising, expected to occupy a more important place, even more important place, it's very crucial that our key relationships are all in good repair, that we optimize our position, that we maintain as good cooperation as possible with as many important players, and in fact, as many players as possible, and that we have that freedom of choice. And there, I think, if you look at India, Russia, the world has seen a lot of ups and downs in the last 70, 80 years. I've said this before and I'll say it again. India-Russia has actually been among the steadiest big relationships, big power or big country relationships in the world. And I think you can see that also in popular sentiment. There is a feeling in the streets about Russia, which is noteworthy. This visit, in many ways, was about reimagining the relationship. It was about building, dimensions and facets which it lacked or didn't have in enough measure. So, if I were to pick 2 or 3 big takeaways, for me, the mobility agreement, where Indians would now much more seamlessly find work opportunities in Russia was one big outcome. An understanding on a joint venture on fertilizers. We are the world's second biggest fertilizer importer after Brazil, and it's a huge, it's a recurring issue that we have, and also because the fertilizer sources have been very unstable. They've turned on and turned off the tap. So we had agreement to create a important, substantial joint venture on fertilizer. In a way, you can say it's food security. And overall, there was a considerable focus on how to bring up the relationship. And
you're trying to further India-Russia ties at a time when the United States would have ideally wanted greater strategic alignment, which now seems very, very difficult. But do you think, given that you're in the final stages, or at least attempting to push through the first tranche of an India-US trade deal, President Putin's very public visit to India complicates negotiations with DC?
India has relations with, with all the major countries of the world. And I think for any country to expect to have a veto or a say in how we develop our relations with others is not a reasonable proposition. Because remember, the others can expect the same. So I think we've always made it very clear that we have multiple relationships. We have a freedom of choice. We talk about what is called strategic autonomy, and that continues, and I cannot imagine why anybody would have reason to expect the contrary. There are really so many uncertainties out there. The best way of dealing with tomorrow, I would say, is capability, capability, and capability. It tells you at the end of the day that much of the world actually, for all the homilies that you get, really, in reality, when it suits them, they can turn facts around upside down and do what they have to do. So, in another context, you use the word transactional. In many ways, the world has always been transactional. That there are good terrorists and bad terrorists. There are good military rulers and apparently not so good ones. for us, the reality of the Pakistani army has always been, and much of our problems actually emanate from there. When you look at the terrorism, when you look at the training camps, when you look at the ideological hostility towards India, where does that come from? It comes from the army. I can only say that, look, at the end of the day, look at the state of Pakistan. See the differentials and the capabilities and frankly the reputation on either side. I think, look, we should not get over obsessed and hyphenate ourselves with them. Yes, there is a challenge, there are issues there, we'll deal with it. So, relax, we'll handle it. So, relax, we'll handle it. What I foresee as almost a generation of uncertainty. After all, look at it this way. Many of the assumptions that we held just a few years ago, perhaps the key assumptions are all a question mark. We had an assumption that globalization is here to stay. It is, in a manner of speaking, but it is under severe challenge in many ways. We had an assumption that the United States will always be a stabilizer of the international system. I think that's a very questionable assumption now. We had an assumption, for example, that West Asia, the Middle East, those problems will never change, the landscape will never change. It has undergone a radical change. We had an assumption that technology would be a great unifier. Technology could actually end up as a great fragmenter. So when you look at many of these issues, I think there are really so many uncertainties out there. The best way of dealing with tomorrow, I would say, is capability, capability, and capability. The world will change around us because often people expect, clarity, and it's like, if you only please so-and-so person, if you only did such and such a thing, it's so, today, so intricate and often so contradictory that the safest thing to bet on is capability. If you have capability, you can handle contingencies. Because there will be contingencies, there will be unforeseen circumstances, with growing frequency and growing rapidity and growing seriousness. When I look at tomorrow and particularly one looks at what artificial intelligence threatens to bring or expects to bring, I think we'll be in for a change of a kind which we can't even imagine.